So after Rachel doing a terrible job as Chancellor, I've decided to run myself, and I'm going to actually kick this off with the strategic approach the country should have made if I were in the lead. I'm just going to make myself Prime Minister for the sake of this video. So the first big move is I want it so that people like me cannot be re-elected in the next term. And that is a big strategic shift, because I believe the big thing that's wrong with politics is that it's become a popularity contest. So much of what they could do and can feasibly deliver on without hurting all of us doesn't get done because they're worried about appeasing the people and getting voted in. So I'm going to remove that I am removing myself from 4 years from now from getting voted in again. So let's jump into how I'm going to clean up the country and solve this £22 billion black hole. If by the end of this video you think I should be voted in, comment vote for Jamie in the comments and I'll know who my true supporters are. I just want to caveat with this that I have no interest in becoming a politician. I do not particularly like politicians, nor do I fully understand the nuance of running a country. That being said, I have run a very successful business over the last decade and have grown a group of multi-8-figure companies. And so I do see the country as one big business that is the most inefficient business ever run and one of the worstly run ones in the world. So caveats are there. Let's go in. So what's the strategy? Cutting. The strategy must be cutting. And this is the thing that really pissed me off with the announcement, is the fact that there just doesn't seem to be a strategy. There is no vision. And I think Rachel come out thinking like she was going to be like Margaret Thatcher or Tony Blair coming out, which, by the way, kind of worked for two reasons. Number one, they were coming off the back of a really strong position in the country, and they had a clear vision in mind. So even if you didn't align with what they had as their vision, at least they bloody had one. The worst thing about any form of leader is a leader not knowing where things are going. And it's really about what is going wrong. So the vision of this is cuts. And I'm really sorry, it doesn't mean that we need to cut that's going to impact you. So I'm going to go through that. So I'm going to go through the culture of the UK right now, what's going to make us an investable country, and how we can make the working class actually working class again, which is a good thing. So that was me stacking my papers / my iPad. So let's roll through. How are we going to cut? So my goal was to save 22 billion without hurting everyone. And some of you are going to get pissed at me. So we're going to go through it. First of all, the child benefits cap. I'm coming for them. I'm sorry. Most ridiculous thing. Now, I did do some research on this. I found this quite interesting. So there's 720,000 households in the UK that have 3 or more kids. 450,000 of which will be impacted by this 2-kid allowance and the break of it. So now if you've got multiple kids, you're going to get benefits, right? But what I did find interesting, and I will back them up here, is a lot of people were like, oh, all of those benefits going to the people that aren't even working. Did you know 59% of the people that are going to benefit from this are working, actually? So here's my proposal. It's not to scrap, which, by the way, that's going to cost us $3 billion a year. My proposal isn't to scrap that. It's to re-divert it. First of all, I'm going to assume out of the 59%, 50% of them are working full-time, which is quite reasonable, and I have people that work for me that also get some support there. So we are going to slash that in half, so we're going to save 1.5 billion by doing this. It might not be that big of a saving, but I'll go through it. And what I'm going to do is you will receive the exact same benefits if you choose to work full-time. Now, we're going to have to do some analysis on this, on the people that literally cannot work, like the truly physically disabled people that can't do it. I understand that. But for those people that can work, if you want to receive benefit, then you will bloody work. And we as a government will make it clear to you that we will financially support you so it becomes financially worthwhile to work rather than be on benefits. So for those of you that are on benefits and you have 3 or more kids, you are going to get financial support if you are going into the workplace. Now, why am I doing this? Number one, I have no problem supporting people that are in a financial situation. And I hate the fact that REEVES goes, oh yeah, no longer will the children pay for the tasks of their adults. And it's like, or their parents. And I'm like, yes, but let's grow up a little bit. It is the adults making the decisions in this world, and we have to create a culture, and cultures are behavioral and they're teachable. So what do I want to do from this? Number one, I want to halve it and save 1.5 billion for the rest of us. But also, I want the people that need to get help to get the help, but also create a culture of a working and contribution society. Now, you might say, well, what if I legitimately cannot find a job? First of all, job seekers is going to be scrapped in its current way of going to job seekers allowance and ticking some boxes 4 or 5 times a week, and there you go, I get my job seekers. But if there truly are not jobs available at your skill level or availability, whilst you are looking, you will need to volunteer for a minimum of 25 hours a week, and you will get the same benefits whilst you're going there. And that could be volunteering for a business until you prove yourself to them that you are employable, or it will be cleaning the streets on community projects as such. And the idea here isn't actually the cost-saving part of this. It's the fact that you will be a contributing member of society if you have the ability to do it. The nanny state is gone. Number 2, curtailment. This is energy curtailment. If you've not heard of this, we pay renewable energy, so like wind farms and stuff like that, an extraordinary amount of money as a country, which is fine. We need it. However, did you know this, that the government contracts are written in a way that even if we don't need the energy, i.e. there's an energy surplus, then we're still paying that money. Do you want to know what it's costing us? The waste, 1 billion a year. Why? Because energy companies haven't invested into figuring out how they can reliably store the excess energy. And so we, as a country, are paying 1 billion a year that we get no use from. And so what I'm going to do is we are going to restate those contracts, or they lose the contracts, that either they figure out and we incentivize them to figure out how to store the energy, and we are happy to pay that billion a year, which, by the way, how will it be used? We're not going to save money from this. It will be redistributed to those that actually need it. The old age pensioner, the people that can't afford to put their heating on, we as a government will heavily subsidize those people through the winter months so that they can have a warm bed to sleep in at night. But until the energy companies get their act together, they are losing the £1 billion of free money that we, the taxpayers, pay every single year. That's 2.5 billion saved. Next, you might not vote for me if you've put vote Jamie, but if you have, get it in now before I say the next one. Foreign aid. We spend about, give or take, it varies every year, but about 15 billion in foreign aid. It's really worth saying that foreign aid also contributes to UK jobs. It is a good thing to do, and I do believe in the law of reciprocity. I also have been on many planes before. And I know the safety briefing every single time says that if the mask comes down, you put your mask on before the person next to you, even if it's a child. And I'm telling you right now, I care about people, but if my house is on fire and your house is on fire, I'm putting my fire out first. And by the way, long term, you can be more generous when you look after the charity at home before abroad. Now, as I said, there are genuine benefits of this, but like any business, it shouldn't be, oh, how much did we spend this year? It should be, here is your budget for the year. So I'm going to assume the average of 15 billion, which it has been around that, and I'm going to take a 10% cut of that back. And so the budget for foreign aid in 2026 is going to be 13.5 billion, saving us a further 1.5 billion. Next is procurement waste. So procurement waste in the UK is absolutely ridiculous, actually, and this is where we're going to make the best savings here. So procurement is in overpay, in misalignment of funds, not thinking the project through. Anyone heard of HS2, which has cost us up to 90 billion to not even make it up here in Leeds? Thanks very much. I mean, what a stupid project to begin with. The NHS IT project, 10 billion, 10 billion. 10 billion. We waste, give or take, 150 billion a year. And you might not notice, but in business, you actually have wastage budgets. And so it's getting scrapped. Now, is it realistic to go, oh, just stop wasting money? No, it doesn't work like that. But hopefully you would agree a target of a 2% saving is a reasonable approach. And so that 2% saving equates to 8.6 billion in savings. This isn't hurting anyone. This is just people getting better and more efficient in their roles. Next, you might not have heard of these. These are called quangos. So quangos are ALAs, arm's length agencies. This is mad. So these are regulators, boards, committees, executive agencies. Are you ready for this? Many overlap, they duplicate tasks, and they operate without any measurable KPIs. That's ridiculous. Now, we're going to get to the NHS, which has the opposite problem, by the way, too many KPIs. But imagine going into business, and by the way, I've been here where people go, what does success look like? I don't know, just throw more money at it. And it's like, well, that's a great way for everyone to feel shit, right? Do you ready for this? 120 billion a year. Now, only a portion of that is legitimate waste, but I'm going to set that at a 2% budget drop in there. So we're going to save a further 2.4 billion. Okay, the next one. I'm going to slow this down a little bit. Immigration. I know, it's a subject that is very delicate, that we don't want to talk around. Now, if you want my actual position on migration and immigration, I think it is a net positive on the country. I think that other countries have got it right, and maybe we should follow suit. I think if we can get genuine talent in, if we can get people that can work in, people that can contribute to society, I think it's really good from ideas, artists, entrepreneurs. Now, I am only going to focus on illegal immigration, okay? So this is not people that have done it the right way, that have applied. And there is a stance where people go, yeah, but how can they get online to do it properly? I'm really sorry. I'm just going to make this blunt. I know they probably have stuff going on in their own country. This is not a moral situation here. But if you manage to get through France and find the right people to pay them the money to acquire a boat, to get you over here, to get you lodgings over here, to get you everything else, you can probably get access to a laptop and do it the right way. Okay, that is my opinion. I have a zero tolerance approach to illegal immigration. Please make that clear, because I do not want any negative comments on this. The cost is 2 billion a year. 2 billion a year in hotel costs and everything, the housing costs, in repatriation, everything else. 2 billion. So far we've saved 19.5 billion. If you didn't hate me before, you might now. I want you to know that I love each and every one of you when I say this. The NHS. The NHS is one of the worst run organisations in the world. It really is. Now, let me be clear. What the NHS stands for, I love. The people that work and you actually interact with, the nurses, the doctors, the support staff, incredible. I am not knocking the individuals. I am knocking the running of the organisation. So this might shock you. The GDP of the country, the revenue of the country, £2.4 trillion. How much does the NHS cost? This year, 238 billion. 10% of the revenue that the country makes is what the NHS costs to run. Just logically, you know how we have free healthcare? 20% of the taxes you pay for the running of the NHS. Now, many of you will listen to that and go, and well bloody worth it. Now, and some of you have gone, where's that 20% benefited me? That's not really what I'm trying to comment on here, but hopefully you can agree. If you run a business and times are tight, if I said 10% budget cut, you would be able to make it work. I do not know many business leaders that wouldn't be able to make that happen without negatively impacting. I'm not going to go that drastic in the NHS, but I will say this. I am not involved in it. I do not understand it, but I want you to understand this. If the NHS spent a week negotiating the cost of blue roll, that alone could save about 500 million a year. And there was a whole study on the blue roll, by the way, of NHS. So here's what I'm going to do. There's three main approaches to the NHS that I would do. First of all, penalising its customers, us. This should really positively impact the NHS. So this year, there's 8 million people that did not attend an appointment. 8 million people. And I'm not talking about they called ahead or they cancelled morning off. That's a whole different thing. I mean, they just didn't show up. 8 million people at a cost of £165 per appointment. That is 1.2 billion in costs. So here's my proposal, and I do accept there's some nuance in here and some logistics that we need to think about in here, because what if it's your Nan Gladys down the road that fell over and couldn't, I get it, we need to think about those things. But my proposal is to put in a £50 fine. And it's a £50 fine, which is not 165, so it's not even the full cost, it's just a deterrent. Now they can put in and appeal it and things like that, and we'll think about that. Here's my prediction. I think that first of all, it will, within a year, reduce no-shows by up to 50%. I really do believe that. But of course, in theory, I think that will save around 600 million a year there. I also think we've got £50 times 4 million there of the people that didn't show up. And then it's creating a cultural shift. So that's 800 million brought in. Now that's not huge, but hopefully everyone would agree that's a lot of money. And one of the ways that we can help support the NHS is to stop putting such a burden on them. And the reality is there are loads of people that genuinely need the NHS. I also know there's people that have a cold for 2 days and then call their doctor. And sorry, we just need to become a bit stronger as a society and stop being absolute pansies. And the reality is, I genuinely would love to see this tested for a year, just a year, to see the impact. And I genuinely think many people that have this nanny state personality wouldn't be taking up our doctors and nurses' time. And maybe you'd actually be able to get an appointment within a couple of days. Next is admin bloat. So this is something I find really interesting. 50% of the NHS are clinical. So only 50% of the staffing in the NHS are doctors, nurses, and around that area. That means 50% are managers and admin. Think about that logically. 3.6 million hired, 1.8 million admin staff. Now, if you are one of them and you work for the NHS and that's one of your roles, I'm not saying that your role in particular should be made redundant or anything like that. But if I said it like this, every doctor, every nurse, every paramedic has a PA. Would you think that was slightly ridiculous? So again, I'm not saying the who here, but I think this needs to be looked at. I think that there are staffing inefficiencies in there. And by the way, within that, it might be the first approach is to look at building inefficiencies. I'll give you a great example. In my Prime Minister's number 10 office, it's also the NHS rents out part of it. And they actually rent out over 50% of this office for a few hundred staff that haven't been here for the last 5 years. It's sat empty for the last 5 years. And there are huge, in fact, government buildings add up to 150 billion in the UK, an average of 46% occupancy. So 54% of the buildings of 150 billion, not rented out, not sold, we're paying for that, just saying. So that's 5 to 7 billion a year. I'm not saying it would be all in staffing, but I believe we can make 20% of that wastage. By the way, 5 to 7 is the studies showing the wastage of it. That's not the cost of it. Wastage, 5 to 7 billion. I think we could save $1 billion in that. And that would be a mix between getting more efficient with the roles, taking away some of the red tape that's unnecessary, which I'll get to in a moment, and some of the buildings that aren't getting used, which I think will bring back stability to pricing in office world as well. So we're at 21.3 billion. The other thing is bloated KPIs that I would get. So the average director there has 18 different KPIs measured on a monthly basis. Imagine coming into a role and going, right, you have 18 things you need to improve on. What are you going to do about this, this? And by the way, we're going to measure it again in 3 weeks' time. How on earth can you operate? If you've got that level of person there, with that level of intelligence, it's just not there. So yeah, I think that's ridiculous. I think that needs to be reduced way down. I think we need to give boundaries with autonomy, with direction, and then make people be rewarded or penalized for the outcomes that they get. Final thing I would do to the NHS is incentivize and give the opportunity to be paid more. Now, I know we're trying to make savings here, but most of the cuts that need to be made in the NHS, from my small amount of research, and it has to be said, a small amount of research, is actually not about how much they get paid or how many people there are. It's in the inefficiencies that are there. And this is my big problem with the NHS, is it's not the workers that are the problem, it's the leadership. It's terrible leadership, in my opinion. It's so much red tape, it's so much blow, and it's the people at the bottom that get impacted the most. So how would I do it? I would make it that cost saving is an opportunity for everyone to benefit from. I would do it 1 quarter each year where I set up an initiative that everyone can bring ideas to the table about cost saving exercises and how they would approach it. I would put an audit process in place. It would be timestamped, so who come up with the idea first. And they would get 50% of the savings for that quarter, which, by the way, like I said, the blue roll alone could save 500 million a year. Imagine you being one of the nurses, being able to contribute to that system, but also benefit, which brings me to the culture. Let me know in the comments before we move to the next section, though. Is there anything you've drastically disagreed with there? It's because we've got to 21.3 billion. The final one you might not like, but it's the wage bands. So REEVES kept them frozen for the next 3 years. I don't think that's required, but what I would like to do is freeze them for 1 year. That will raise the final 3 billion that we require, which brings us to 24.3 billion in saved. If we assume a 90% success rate, that will hit the 22 billion black hole. And my commitment is, and I'll put it in writing now, that no matter what happens, we will be improving those bands next year that cannot get reversed, because that's how confident I am in the impact of this. So 24.3 billion. I might be delusional, by the way. I know there are several other sectors. Maybe I could have been harsher or more lenient in others, but I think that is genuinely a fairly logical approach. And do you know what? At least I have a vision and a bloody strategy towards it. So we've covered cutting. Tick. Next is the culture. Some of you are not going to like this, but it's my opinion, I'm going to share it. I think we've become a nanny state. I think we've become a welfare culture, and I think it needs to stop. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want to go to the other extreme where it's just like you either become wealthy or nothing. But ultimately, we have built this culture where you can come into the country, you can live in the country, or even if you were born in the country, we'll look after you no matter what. And I think that I actually did this in a video. I got a lot of stick for it. If I weren't rich, I'd rather be on benefits. I really would. And the reason is, I grew up in a benefits family, by the way. I would prefer to just read and chill. And I got a lot of stick. Oh, is that what you think being benefits on? Yeah, I do. For a majority of people. And I can say it because I was brought up in a benefits family. Now, it's the reason I'm saying this isn't that we shouldn't have a culture of a socialist approach. But socialism doesn't work. It never has worked. You cannot name a single country with our level of productivity that it does work. And often people go, oh, what about Scandinavia? It's like, yeah, welcome to a high-tax socialist country that does work, or region that does work, because their productivity levels are some of the highest in the world. We do not have that. We have a dropping productivity level of 0.3% year on year since the 90s. Our productivity as a country is useless. And the reason for that is the cultural shift that is about what can we take from the country rather than what do we contribute to the country. I pay a lot of tax, and genuinely, I don't like it, but I genuinely am okay if I saw where it was going. And so I genuinely believe we should not be hurting those people that are on benefits or anything like that. I don't think we should be taking away from them. I think we should be layering conditions. I think, for example, if you genuinely are able to work and you're saying, I'm looking for work, I want to work, great. In order to receive these benefits, you need to volunteer a certain amount of hours each week. And maybe we say it's 25 hours, 5 of them are looking for other jobs, 20 of them are contributing. Could be cleaning graffiti off the wall. It could be contributing to a small business and getting them up and running. It could be your local community. But I believe we need a cultural shift of contributing society. This is still looking after the infirm. This is still looking after those on benefits. This is still looking after our pensioners. But if you can work, you are of working age, you will contribute to the country, or you can leave and we will fund it. Number 3, how would I make this an investable country? This is the most important thing. Now, a lot of people don't like business owners and everything like that. And why? Because I believe the country, the government, the whoever you want to think, has done really well of turning the poor versus the rich. And I think that's a really poor thing to do. In the Western world, we do that a lot. Over in America, they do it towards politicians. So you're a Lib Dem or you're a Republican. Here it's you're rich or you're poor and we hate each other and all of that. And actually, you want wealthy people in your country. You want business owners in your country. You want them to do really well. You want them to be rich. You want them to have all these crazy things that you will never have. Why would I say that? Because they pay more tax, because they contribute to the roads, because they contribute to higher wages, and they contribute to the cost of living going down and being more enjoyable for you. So it's not about hating on them, it's about how do we work them. So there's 5 things that I would do. Some of them you might like, some of them you might not. Number 1 is a cap on personal taxes. So Italy do this very well. Italy actually have quite a high tax band. I think it's 45%, don't quote me on that. But then what they do is once you have paid £200,000 of tax personally, not as a business, you're still going to pay all of your corporation tax. Once you've paid £200,000 a year of tax, then you don't pay anymore. They're just like, you've done your part. You as an individual have paid a huge amount of money into this country, just enjoy it. I would like to do the same. Personally, I would increase that to around 350 to 400,000. I think people do and will be willing to pay that premium to live in our country because I genuinely believe that it is the best country in the world. And I really do stand by that. I think it is still an incredible country to live. And I know many, many centimillionaires, 100 million plus, that would be willing to pay the premium to live here. It's not about not paying taxes, it's the fact that it feels endless. So I put a personal tax cap at about 350, 400,000. That's not earnings, that's the personal tax they pay. They're still going to pay dividend tax, they're still going to pay corporation tax. Number 2, we're going to incentivize new businesses. So for the first 5 years of business, you will not pay any corporation tax, you will not pay any employer's national insurance. You'll still pay dividends and VAT. Why? The reason you will pay dividends is because if you're choosing to take money out of your business, that's fine, but you will still pay tax on that. I think that's reasonable. You will still pay VAT, number 1, because you need to be competitive with everyone else. And if you can only exist in a competitive market by not charging VAT, then you're going to be crippled when you can be. So you're still going to pay that, and I also think it's good to get used to paying taxes for when year 6 comes. Why would I remove corporation tax and employers' national insurance? Well, because it's delayed gratification. The amount of tax that a new business pays in the first 5 years is incredibly small. It's a tiny contribution to our country, but it absolutely cripples small businesses. So by doing that, that incentivizes new businesses, not just in the UK, but around the world, knowing that you can come to our country and build something really special here. We'll get you up and running. We'll support you. We'll back you. And then when you can contribute, great, we're going to want our fair share. But I think that would be a really good incentive. Now, I spoke about the 1.5 billion that we saved earlier from removing or altering the child tax benefit in there. We're going to allocate that spend, and we're going to allocate it to small businesses. Hold on, you're taking from the poor and giving from the rich here. Not quite. I'm supporting the working class. I will allocate 1.5 billion a year for companies that haven't hired their first 2 employees. And I will allocate that 1.5 billion to financially support the hiring of your first 2 employees in your business. This will help people start scaling their business from the one-man, one-woman band into an actual business that can contribute heavily to society in year 6. What it will also do is help people that are at the beginning of their work journey to get jobs earlier and feel confident that the startup they're buying into can actually afford to pay them. And I'm going to allocate that 1.5 billion every single year. Number 4, I'm going to remove all taxes from going public. So this is a really big one. When you go into an IPO, which is an initial public offering, it's when you're going to go on the FTSE or you're going to do that. If you go on the FTSE in the UK, you will not pay any stamp duty. Now, the current government's delayed that. I think it should be scrapped altogether. The reason for this is we actually have really good financial markets in the UK, but the reality is what we're seeing a huge amount of, you might not notice, is people are building their businesses, they're ready to go public, but then they're going to America on the NASDAQ and going public there. And the reason for that is because, number 1, there's really good liquidity. We also have good liquidity, but they don't tax you on it. So imagine you've just absolutely busted a nut for the last 20 years and you're about to do a raise at 2 billion and then you can pay this ridiculous stamp duty. Why do we want that here? Because we then capture the business here forever. And we really need to screw up for it to go elsewhere, but we're doing a pretty good job of that right now. So what that will mean is it is a tax. It's an exciting tax environment to be in for an entrepreneur. You want to get big here. We won't have the owner of Revolut just suddenly moving 700 million a year somewhere else. We will have people that want to come in this country, stay in this country, and grow in this country, creating local jobs. Number 5, I am going to increase taxes on wants and reduce taxes on needs. We're going to do a fair assessment policy where we're going to have representatives from each focus group, from those that are on benefits all the way up to the super rich. And we're going to analyze what is an actual need. We're talking about survival. This will include stuff like clothes for your kids. This will include things like nappies, hygiene, things like that. But absolute necessity, I am on survival mode. There will be 0 tax implications for you or the company providing them. They will get tax exemptions. On the other side, if you want your Gucci handbag, then you are going to have higher taxes to pay. And we need to work out the numbers of that. I'm not saying this will raise more taxes, but what it will mean is that the rich are paying more than the middle and the working class, and it will be through consumption taxes. Consumption taxes are the biggest thing in there. So anything there will have a sliding scale. I think this will keep taxes the same, but it will actually impact the rich, but only when they're spending the way they want to spend. Finally, and I'm going to wrap up the video here because I think this is going on a bit now, but I hope it's been valuable. I want to make the working class again. And I'll explain what I mean. So when we come up with these tax bands of the 40%, the 45%, the idea is that the 45% taxpayers were the rich, like the really rich. The 40% taxpayers were your middle class people, like you're owning your semi-detached or your detached house, you've got 2-3 cars, you know what I'm talking about. But when they did that, it was something like less than 8% of people would be paying the 40% tax mark. Now it's over 50% of people. The median salary in the UK is 37,000. And so to say that 50,000 is middle class and you should start paying 40%, I think is absolutely ridiculous. My opinion of working class is anyone that is from entering the market up to around 60,000 a year. And my personal goal by the end of my 4-year term is for everyone that is earning up to 60,000 a year to be paying the 20% tax mark. And for everyone between 60 and 250 will be paying the 40% tax mark, at which point you'll be at the 45% tax mark, capped at that £350,000 to £400,000 tax. I think the attack has shifted from working class to middle class to those on benefits and the super rich. And the reality is the working class have been forgotten. And I had a Labour upbringing, and all I want to do is vote Labour again. I really do. But not with this government. Not the way it is. So this has been my personal view. That is what I would do around cutting, shifting the culture, making us an investable country again, and making the working class, and actually treating them as such and looking after them and creating a culture where they want to be a part of the middle class. They want to be a part of the contribution society. They want to be somebody that gives back and is proud of their country. Let me know in the comments with vote for Jamie if you would vote me in, or you could tell me an absolute idiot. Again, I'm coming from this from a place of complete naivety, but sometimes when people go, it's not that simple, it is that simple. And the reality is we all need to buckle down and belt this in. And I think this is a really good approach. And I also, the final thing I thought of on the investable country is we do a 5-year trial and we put into contract that we have measurable outcomes that if we don't hit them, then we do a complete rethink of the whole thing. So the reason this works is I don't care about opinions and I am not going to get voted in again. And that is something that I stopped myself. So the reason that's important is it stops it becoming a popularity contest and starts us actually focusing on what the country needs. So vote for Jamie by hitting subscribe and the notification bell, and we'll get back to the regular videos from next week.